Handle it yourself. We had no choice. Those were the only words my mother bothered to leave me after abandoning everything we'd built together for 22 years. I stood there on the cracked driveway in Sacramento, California, staring at cardboard boxes that contained my entire life, watching strangers peer through what used to be my bedroom window. My name is Danielle Price, and at 22 years old, my world was supposed to be just beginning. I had just finished my third year at Northwestern University, a grueling but rewarding journey studying cybersecurity. My dreams were painted in the vibrant colors of Silicon Valley, with fantasies of landing a coveted position at one of the major tech firms. The world was at my fingertips, or so I thought. The final exams that spring had been absolutely brutal. I'd pulled 3 all-nighters in a row, a masochistic ritual fueled by a cocktail of lukewarm energy drinks and sheer, white-knuckled determination. My code was a blur. My eyes felt like sandpaper, but the thought of coming home, of collapsing into the familiar comfort of my own bed, was the light at the end of a very long, dark tunnel. I pictured the warm, welcoming smell of my dad's famous weekend pancakes, a scent that, for me, was the very definition of home. I couldn't wait to sit at our worn kitchen table and tell my parents all about my internship prospects. Professor Williams, my mentor and the head of the cybersecurity department, had recommended me for a summer position at Nexra Labs, a giant in the industry. It was the kind of opportunity that could define a career before it even began, and I was bursting to share the news. I'd even bought a small gift for my mom during my layover in Chicago. It was a simple ceramic mug, but the words "World's Best Mom" were painted in cheerful yellow letters that matched her sunny disposition, or what I remembered of it. I imagined her surprise, her warm hug, the way her eyes would crinkle at the corners when she smiled. The red-eye bus ride from Chicago to Sacramento was a long, uncomfortable ordeal. The seats were stiff, the air was stale, and a man a few rows back snored with the force of a malfunctioning chainsaw. But I was too excited to sleep. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching the dark, endless ribbon of highway unfold, and kept imagining walking through our front door. That single, comforting thought had gotten me through those final, torturous weeks of the semester. When the cab finally dropped me off at 1247 Oakwood Street that Tuesday morning, the sun was just beginning to burn through the early morning haze. I paid the driver, a tired-looking man who gave me a sympathetic glance as I heaved my duffel bag out of the trunk. But as I turned to face my childhood home, everything felt wrong. Instantly, chillingly wrong. The lawn, my mom's pride and joy, was completely dead. The lush green carpet she meticulously watered and tended to was gone, replaced by brown, brittle patches scattered across the yard like leprous sores. Her prized flower garden, a vibrant explosion of roses, lavender, and hydrangeas, was a desolate wasteland of withered stems and scorched earth. The curtains, the soft, cream-colored ones that had hung in our windows for as long as I could remember, were gone. Every window was a dark, vacant eye, leaving the house looking hollow and abandoned. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, panicked drumbeat. But it was the bold, red, sold sign planted where our mailbox used to be that made my stomach drop to my feet. The metal post was driven deep into the dead grass, an alien monument on the landscape of my entire life. I approached the porch slowly, my duffel bag feeling heavier with each step, the World's Best Mom mug clinking softly inside. That's when I saw them. Cardboard boxes, dozens of them, were stacked carelessly beside the front steps. They were sealed with silver duct tape and scribbled across the side of each one, in my mom's familiar, looping handwriting, was my name. Danielle's room. Danielle's books. Danielle's clothes. Garbage bags, stuffed with what looked like my old high school textbooks and winter coats, were shoved between the boxes like afterthoughts, like trash that hadn't quite made it to the curb. Taped to the center of the front door was a single piece of notebook paper, fluttering slightly in the morning breeze. My hands trembled as I reached for it, my fingers fumbling with the tape. I ripped it off and read the message that would change everything. Handle it yourself. We had no choice. Mom. No warning. No phone call. No explanation. Just those cold, dismissive words and my entire childhood scattered across the driveway like unwanted trash. I sank onto the top step, the world tilting on its axis. I fumbled for my phone and dialed my mother's number, my hands shaking so badly I could barely press the buttons. The ominous feeling that had been building in my chest was about to explode into something much, much worse. My mom picked up on the third ring. Her voice, when it came, was clipped and carried that familiar tone of irritation she usually reserved for telemarketers and unexpected interruptions.
What is it, Danielle? I'm Buse.
What is it? I repeated, my own voice cracking, a pathetic, reedy sound. Mom, I'm standing in front of her house, and there's a sold sign in the yard. All my stuff is in boxes on the driveway. What happened? There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line, a sound of profound annoyance, as if my distress was nothing more than a minor inconvenience.
Oh, that, she said.
I could hear my father's muffled voice in the background, of a low murmur of agreement. We had to sell quickly, she continued, her tone flat and devoid of emotion. The market was good, and we got an offer we couldn't refuse. We're starting fresh in Florida. Florida? The word felt foreign, absurd.
When?
Why didn't you tell me? The questions tumbled out of me, a frantic cascade of disbelief and hurt, each one more desperate than the last. You're an adult now, Danielle, she said, and the coldness in her voice was a physical blow. You'll figure it out. We couldn't wait around for your schedule. Her words hit me like physical blows, stealing the air from my lungs. My schedule? I was taking finals so I could get a good job. The internship I told you about next. Your cousin Patricia found us a great place in Tampa, she said, completely ignoring me. The weather's better for your father's arthritis. I pressed my free hand against my forehead, the world spinning. But what about my room? My things? Where am I supposed to go? You're 22 years old, she repeated, the words a cruel, dismissive mantra. You should be independent by now, anyway. Most kids your age are already living on their own. The casual cruelty in her voice made my chest tighten until I could barely breathe. We did you a favor, really. Now you're forced to grow up.
A favor?
I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You sold my childhood home without telling me and left my belongings on the street like garbage. How is that a favor? Don't be so dramatic. Everything's in boxes, nothing's damaged. She paused, and I could hear my father's voice more clearly now, a low, indistinct rumble in the background. Look, we have to go. We're meeting with a realtor about our new place. You're smart. You'll figure something out. The line went dead. I stared at my phone screen in disbelief, seeing my reflection in the black surface. Pale, shocked, abandoned. 22 years of family dinners, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and bedtime stories, reduced to a single, callous phrase. You'll figure it out. I tried calling my dad, but it went straight to voicemail. His cheerful greeting, recorded years ago, now felt like a cruel joke. You've reached James Price. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. But I knew he wouldn't. Neither of them would. Neighbors were starting to peek through their windows. Mrs. Henderson from next door, a woman who'd known me since I was a baby, even stepped onto her porch, shading her eyes with her hand as she tried to get a better look at the spectacle on the Price family's former lawn. The humiliation burned through me like acid. I grabbed the heaviest box, one labeled Danielle's books, and dragged it toward the sidewalk, my vision blurring with tears. I refused to let them fall. I refused to give my parents the satisfaction of my breakdown. Whatever warning signs I'd missed, whatever financial troubles they'd hidden from me, none of it mattered now. They'd made their choice, and that choice didn't include me. The next few hours passed in a haze of phone calls and desperate planning. I called my roommate, Jessica, first, but she was spending the summer in Seattle with her boyfriend. Then I tried my study group friends, but most of them had already left for internships or gone home to their own families. The isolation hit me harder than the abandonment. I'd been so focused on school, on building a future, that I'd never built a real support network outside of my family. And now my family was gone. Finally, I reached Maya Patel, a girl from my freshman dorm who had dropped out junior year to start her own web design business. We hadn't been close, but she was the only person I could think of who was still in the area. "Danielle? Oh my God. What's wrong? You sound terrible," she said, her voice warm with genuine concern. Through tears I couldn't control anymore, I explained the situation. Maya listened without interrupting, making small sounds of sympathy and outrage in all the right places. When I finished, a wreck of sobs and hiccups, she was quiet for a long moment. "Pack whatever you can carry and come over," she said finally. "I have a couch and my roommate's out of town for 2 weeks. We'll figure out the rest later." That simple act of kindness broke something open in my chest. I've been holding myself together through sheer stubbornness, but Maya's offer reminded me that not everyone would abandon me when things got difficult. I spent the rest of the afternoon sorting through my scattered life, deciding what I could carry and what I'd have to leave behind. Photo albums from elementary school, yearbooks I'd never looked at, stuffed animals that seemed ridiculous now, they all went into the leave behind pile. I kept my laptop, my textbooks, enough clothes for 2 weeks, and a small wooden jewelry box my grandmother had given me before she died. The hardest part was leaving my childhood bedroom furniture on the curb. The desk where I'd done homework every night through high school, the bookshelf my dad had built when I was 12, the mirror where I'd practiced my college interview answers, all of it abandoned, like it had never meant anything. As I loaded my salvaged belongings into Maya's car that evening, I made a decision that would define the next 2 years of my life. I pulled out my phone and systematically blocked every number connected to my parents. My mom's cell, my dad's work phone, even my Aunt Carol, who might try to play mediator. Then I deleted their contact information entirely, leaving no trace of the people who'd raised me for 22 years, only to discard me like an unwanted responsibility. My friend Maya's apartment became my sanctuary. She was a whirlwind of pragmatic energy and unwavering support. "You were a good daughter to bad parents," she told me, pulling me into a fierce hug after I recounted the full, sordid tale. "Some people just shouldn't have kids." Her words, simple and direct, were a balm to my raw, wounded soul. The days that followed were a blur. Living with Maya was supposed to be temporary, but temporary stretched into 3 months as I scrambled to rebuild my life from nothing. I picked up a part-time job at a local coffee shop, the smell of roasted beans and steamed milk becoming the new scent of my survival. I spent my nights finishing my summer coursework online, sleeping on Maya's lumpy couch, and trying to pretend that waking up homeless hadn't completely derailed my carefully planned future. The worst part wasn't the physical discomfort or even the financial strain. It was the constant, gnawing question of why. What kind of parents sell their house and move across the country without telling their child? What kind of emergency forces you to abandon your daughter with nothing but a sticky note and some cardboard boxes? I kept thinking I must have done something wrong, been a bad daughter somehow. The words felt like glass in my throat. But I couldn't think of anything. I got good grades, I stayed out of trouble, I called them every week from school. I loved them. As we walked back into the coffee shop after a break one afternoon, I felt something shifting inside me. The part of me that had been hoping for reconciliation, the part that had been making excuses for their behavior, finally died. They'd shown me exactly who they were, and I was finally ready to believe them. The revelation about my parents' calculated abandonment sparked something dangerous in me. A cold, focused determination that surprised even Maya. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, I channeled my rage into action. I applied for every scholarship, grant, and work-study program I could find. I took on extra shifts at the coffee shop and started freelancing, offering cybersecurity consultations for small businesses. I threw myself back into my studies with renewed focus, attacking my cybersecurity coursework like my life depended on it.
Because in a way, it did.
Every skill I learned, every certification I earned, every professional connection I made was another layer of armor against ever being vulnerable again. Professor Williams noticed the change in my work immediately. "Danielle, your latest project on network penetration testing is graduate-level work," he said after class one day, his eyes crinkling with approval. "Have you considered accelerating your degree timeline?" I had been considering it, actually. "How fast could I finish?" I asked, my voice steady. "If you take summer courses and overload your schedule, you could graduate a full year early," he said. "The workload would be intense, but based on your recent performance," he shrugged, "I think you could handle it." That night, I mapped out an aggressive academic plan that would have me graduating in December instead of the following spring. It meant taking 6 courses per semester instead of 4, working internships during every break, and basically eliminating any social life I might have built. But it also meant entering the job market a year ahead of my peers, with a year less debt and a year more distance from the people who'd abandoned me. The plan was working perfectly until November, when everything changed again. I was in the middle of a particularly challenging cryptography assignment when my phone buzzed with a notification I hadn't seen in months. A message request on social media from someone named Patricia Price. My mother had found me. "Danielle, honey, I know you're angry, but we need to talk.
Please call me.
We're in trouble, and we need your help. You're the only one who can help us now." I stared at the message for a long time, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately, to maintain the wall I'd built around myself. But a larger part was curious. Morbidly curious about what kind of trouble could drive my mother to reach out after months of radio silence. I screenshotted the message and sent it to Maya with a single question mark. Her response came back immediately. "Oh, hell no. Don't even think about it."
But I was thinking about it.
Not because I wanted to help them. That ship had sailed long ago. I was thinking about it because for the first time since they'd abandoned me, I held all the power. They needed something from me. Something they couldn't get anywhere else. And after months of being the one left behind, discarded and dismissed, the idea of being needed felt intoxicating. I opened my laptop and started researching. What kind of trouble could 2 middle-aged retirees get into in Florida? Whatever it was, I had a feeling I was about to discover that my parents' cruel abandonment had been motivated by more than just a desire for my independence. I didn't respond to my mother's message immediately. Instead, I spent 3 days researching James and Patricia Price in Tampa, Florida, using every cybersecurity tool and technique I'd learned. What I found was even worse than I'd imagined. Public records showed they'd purchased a luxury condo in a gated community for $800,000, nearly 3 times what they'd sold our Sacramento house for. They'd also bought a new Mercedes and taken several expensive cruises, based on social media posts from my cousin Patricia's account. But more interesting were the recent developments. 3 months ago, my father had been arrested for investment fraud. He'd apparently been running a Ponzi scheme, targeting elderly retirees in their community, promising impossible returns on cryptocurrency investments. The scheme had collapsed when too many investors tried to withdraw their money at once. My mother's desperate message suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't in trouble. They were facing federal charges. And they needed their daughter, the cybersecurity expert, to help them hide their stolen money, or manipulate evidence, or do whatever illegal thing they thought I might be willing to do for family. After discovering their crimes, I felt a cold satisfaction settle over me. They'd abandoned me to chase easy money and a luxury lifestyle, and now that it had all fallen apart, they expected me to rescue them. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. The breaking point, however, came in December, just weeks before my early graduation. I was walking across campus after my last final exam, a profound sense of accomplishment washing over me, when a woman approached me near the library. She was middle-aged, professionally dressed, and carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting answers. "Danielle Price? I'm Agent Sandra Martinez with the FBI. I'd like to speak with you about your parents. My blood ran cold, but I forced my voice to stay steady. I don't have parents, I said, the lie tasting bitter but necessary. Agent Martinez raised an eyebrow. I understand you've been estranged, but I have records showing James and Patricia Price claimed you as a dependent on their tax returns through last year. They've also listed you as their emergency contact on several financial documents. That's news to me, I said, and this time it was honest. Honestly, I haven't spoken to them since last summer. Yet they've been telling investigators that their daughter is helping them manage their finances remotely. She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. They claim you have access to several offshore accounts they've been using to hide assets. Agent Martinez studied my face carefully. The rage that hit me was so intense I actually saw red spots at the edges of my vision. They hadn't just abandoned me. They were now trying to frame me for their crimes. Even after cutting all contact, they were still finding ways to destroy my life. I need to see identification, I said, pulling out my phone. And then I need to call my attorney. Agent Martinez looked surprised. You have an attorney? I will in about 5 minutes. I was already scrolling through my contacts to find the legal aid number the university had provided. Because if my parents are claiming I helped them commit federal crimes, I need legal representation immediately. The FBI investigation that followed was the most terrifying month of my life, but it was also the most vindictive. I cooperated fully. Every document I provided, every alibi I established, every piece of evidence that proved my innocence also proved my parents' guilt more conclusively. When they were finally sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, I felt nothing but relief that I'd never have to see them again. As I walked across the stage at graduation, 6 months ahead of schedule, diploma in hand, and a job offer from Nexra Labs in my pocket, I realized that their abandonment had been the best thing that ever happened to me. It had forced me to become someone who could never be abandoned again.